News Channel 5's political analyst Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. Our guest today is David Plazas, the opinion and engagement editor at the Tennessean. He also has similar duties with the USA Today network statewide. David, I don't think we've had you on the show before. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Pat.
I know a lot of people understand perhaps the opinion part of your job, but the engagement might be, what's that about?
Sure, the engagement part is about getting into the community, both physically and also in the virtual spaces, be it creating forums on issues like affordable housing or transit, or also doing Facebook Lives and having the opportunity to really listen to people, hear people's opinions, and help also get their opinions out on our different platforms. As
a part of your engagement, as a part of reaching out into the community, what do you think, let's just start here in Nashville, that what's on people's minds these days? What are the #1 issues that concern them?
So the top local issues that I hear about are the transit referendum, the $5.2 billion proposal that's supposed to go before the voters in May. The other thing I'm hearing a lot about is Fort Negley. The question is the future of that. You know, should you turn the Greer Stadium property into a park, or should it be allowed to be developed? And then other issues of affordable housing. That's the subject of a big project that I've been doing all year called the Cost of Growth and Change in Nashville, and that really is the #1 issue I hear.
We had the recent thing that happened with the change in General Hospital. That only happened about a week ago as far as the announcement from the mayor's office. Is that coming up on the list at this point?
It is, and in fact we have some op-eds that are running today online, both by Mayor Berry and then also by Representative Brenda Gilmore. They'll be in print on Sunday, November 19th, and essentially they talk about the different rationale. For Mayor Berry, she talks about the rationale for seeing a hospital where only about 1/3 of the beds were being used, where a lot of people were using their patient services at other hospitals like Vanderbilt or HCA or St. Thomas. Representative Gilmore is very concerned that the process wasn't followed to inform the community, and that she feels it's a slight against many of the African American communities since it serviced that population for so long.
I know a lot of people are interested in the civility issue, and I know it's one of the things you say is going to be one of your future projects. What have you got in mind, particularly in dealing with that issue? I know you get a lot of reaction to the things you write, and not all of them are civil, I understand.
No, not all of it is civil, but we made a very intentional push for people to send in their letters of 150 words or less about civil discourse, modeling civil discourse at the Thanksgiving table. So on Thanksgiving Day, we're presenting these various opinions from people. I've been so impressed by hearing people's suggestions for how do you have a conversation with each other? How is it that we can get past an election? It's been over a year now. President Trump is president, and the question is, we still have to face each other. Can we model at the dinner table something for America to follow?
The civility issue, I think, probably began before the 2016 election. Do you think it's being driven by things like social media? Because people will do and say things on social media they would never say in person to somebody.
That's definitely a factor. And what we found, whether it's with commenting or social media, people tend to be a lot bolder on those platforms, and at the same time we've seen tremendous amounts of people who are unfollowing or unfriending people who don't agree with them. So there's a lot of echo chamberism, so to speak, and so the opportunities to really discuss things in a way where you can bring two different opinions together is really missed when you do that.
You mentioned the mayor's transit plan as the paper planning to be pretty aggressive in its editorial stance about that. Most council members I talk to seem to think they're going to approve putting it on the ballot, even though it takes a majority. They may not like parts of the plan, but they think the public wants to vote on something.
So we had a preliminary editorial in support of this plan, and a lot of it comes from work that I've been doing for the last 3 years on transit. I'm a graduate of Transit Academy at Lipscomb University, and at the same time I rode the bus once a week for a whole year to really understand what the transit issues are in the city. And I think that I was able to convince the board that we need to support an effort to really move our mobility equation here in Nashville.
You like the plan that she's outlined to this point?
I think it's a practical plan. Obviously, there are some considerations people need to debate, which is the future of self-driving vehicles, for example, or the issue related to congestion. There's been a lot of confusion that this will solve the congestion issue.
It doesn't appear this plan addresses congestion much at all. I mean, maybe indirectly, but not directly.
No, and transit does not. And we're going to see congestion get worse if we continue to grow at a pace of 100 people a day. What this does, it gives people alternatives, reliable alternatives, strengthening the bus system, and at the same time creating a light rail system. Now, there's a lot of controversy about light rail. One of the differences that we're seeing in Nashville is Music City Star, for example, is seeing a 10% increase in its ridership over the last 2 years. Now, bus service we're seeing a decline in ridership, and a lot of it is because of gentrification and displacement issues that we're seeing. But we know that we need a way to get people around, and especially people who are working class and low income people who are being pushed further and further away from the core where they need to work.
This idea that some of the opponents are saying that light rail just doesn't work, it looks to me that seems to be the way they're trying to defeat the plan, even though there are other things in this plan besides light rail.
Well, light rail works. The question is, do you want to pay for it? And it's very expensive, per mile. And the question is, do we want to put some permanent tracks down on a street, and who will it service? So there are some legitimate concerns about whether it's in the right place. But this study was done during Nashville Next, which was the 3-year planning process, where we saw where are the corridors, what do we want to do with those corridors like Gallatin, like Nolensville, Murfreesboro, Charlotte, and it makes sense to do that, because what is essentially going to happen is that it's going to be a connected state where you have ride shares like Uber and Lyft that are connecting with platforms, that are connecting with bus lines, that are connecting people to work.
But does ride sharing have more to do with decreasing the need for transit, or does it make it more important?
It's a choice, really. Currently the people who use ride sharing are typically professionals, middle class. They include people who have the option of saying, millennials,
but not completely.
And not completely millennials, but people who want to get from point A to point B, who don't want to drive, and want an affordable alternative to having to drive and having to pay for those parking costs that you see in downtown, for example. What I've talked to in my research and talking to Steve Bland, who's the head of MTA, the idea would be is if you could get from your house, let's say you're someone who needs to take the bus, who wants to take a combination of different tools, rather than walking a half a mile, you call some kind of service, whether it's Lyft, Uber, or something else, takes you to the bus stop, and there you go on your way. And this is actually not unusual. I grew up in Chicago, so oftentimes I'd get dropped off at a bus station or get dropped off at a train station or walk, and this is just something that takes it to a 21st century level.
So you see them as potentially complementary, not necessarily adversarial, or
I don't see them adversarial at all, and I see some people who will choose just one over the other. For example, when I don't want to drive, I take Lyfts and rideshares. I don't take the bus that often anymore, only because of the frequency issues, which I'm hoping that this plan fixes, because I think that we have a very low ridership, which is 1.3% in the region. Compare that to Seattle, which has nearly 10%. And the idea is if you don't have quality, reliable, frequent service, people are not going to use it.
Given to some extent the limited scope of what the mayor's plan is, it's a step, but obviously there are other things to be done if you're going to address it on a regional basis. Is this particular vote, if it comes to it in May, going to be as important, say, as the 1962 vote for consolidated government here in Metro? Is it going to be as important as the vote on the football stadium, some of the others that Metro has had over the years?
It's enormous. It's the most important and largest infrastructure investment Nashville will have ever made if it passes. And a lot of people ask, well, why don't you build it out in Williamson County or Wilson County? It's because the state law doesn't permit it. The state law only allows county by county referendums, and only for the largest counties. I believe it's over 112,000 population.
Usually most of the donut counties around Nashville and a couple of others.
Exactly. So and the other counties are looking for Nashville, looking to see what they're going to do, because if it fails in Nashville, they're not going to build out a system. If it passes in Nashville, suddenly you have the potential to build out a system that goes to Murfreesboro, that goes to Clarksville, that goes to other places that we want to have people move around, because the fact is it's getting more and more expensive to live in Nashville. People need options to get around as quickly as possible.
David Plazas is our guest. He's the opinion and engagement editor at the Tennessean and for the USA Network across the state. Back to continue our conversation after this break.